Atomic batteries to power. Turbines to speed.
Roger. Ready to move out.
You ever dance with the devil in the pale moonlight?
This town needs an enema.
Riddle me this, riddle me that. Who's afraid of the big black bat?
When Gotham is ashes, you have my permission to die.
This is your liberation.
My mother warned me about getting into cars with strange men.
This isn't a car.
20 years in Gotham. How many good guys are left? How many stayed that way? He has the power to wipe out the entire human race.
Tell me, do you bleed? You will.
I want you to tell all your friends about me.
What are you?
He's a silent guardian. A watchful protector. In the dark night.
I'm Batman.
Let the games begin.
Welcome to the Batman on Film podcast. Here are your hosts, Bill, Jett, and Rick Shew.
Welcome to hey now, I should always say.
Yes, hey now.
Hey now. Welcome to the Batman on Film podcast. I'm actually your host for this special episode, Rick Shew. Today we're going to kind of break away from our normal Batman chatter, and we're going to focus on one of my other passions, is Star Wars. Yes, and we are aware that this is a Batman on Film podcast, but hey, look.
Come on, man. Geeks of the world unite.
Who cares, right? There's no rules here. We feel as though that we can focus on anything that's pop culture, and hopefully you'll enjoy it. And that's all we're doing here today. And we all know that Star Wars Rogue One, A Star Wars Story, is coming out December 16th. So today we're just going to discuss all things Star Wars. It should be interesting. I'm sure there's going to be some prequel debate that will be healthy and fun. But before I introduce the panel, I actually want to say that Bill Jett Ramey, our editor-in-chief, is here, but not a panelist per se. Is that fair to say, Bill?
I'm here. I would say I'm a lurker. How about that?
He's a lurker.
In the background. I may chime in every once in a while. I think since
you don't really want me addressing.
Oh, that'd be so awesome.
Yeah, he's gonna be the Phantom Menace.
Yes, I will say that. I will just let me throw out before y'all take over my show is that I am the only one present who saw the original Star Wars in theaters in 1977.
Oh man,
I'm going to split hairs a little bit here. That is factually accurate. However,
okay, can I ask, by the way, where everybody falls in their lifespan of where they've seen the different movies?
We'll get to that.
Let's. That's a great question, Brian. Let's save that for the question that I actually am going to lead with. Brian will actually dictate that answer. So let's park that. But that's a damn good question. But Bill, I want to just say that I saw the original release. Sort of. It was the 1980 re-release before Empire came out, so I saw it in the theater, and like you and I had discussed before, this was actually episode 4, whereas yours did not have that in the crawl because, and anybody chime in here if I have my history wrong on this, but as I understand it, he wanted it in there, and the studio was like, no, that's weird and confusing, and this movie's going nowhere anyway. And then it took off. They're like, okay, sure, do whatever you want to do, Mr. Lucas. Episode 4 it is, right? Yep. And so that's that's the little brief history of the episodic part of the crawl. Anybody? Yes? No? Maybe?
That's it. That's true.
Okay, I didn't mean to like jump on your bragging rights, Bill.
You didn't. I still have scoreboard. There's no way you can gloss that over.
He still wins that one.
And Bill, where did you see it? Do you remember?
Yes, I saw it at the Village Theater in Port Arthur, Texas. I grew up in Groves, Texas, which is, if you know anything about Texas geography, it's what's called the Golden Triangle. It's right in deep southeast Texas, right near the coast, butted up to Louisiana. So, yep, that's where I saw it.
And you know, Bill being from that area of Texas, and then me being from Dallas, Bill might as well be from outer Mongolia. It's like two different worlds. Right, Bill? Port Arthur is not, Dallas or North Texas.
No, it's but there is, wherever you travel to Texas, there's still a lot of very much Texas to wherever you go, whether it be Austin or Dallas or, they all have their differences. So, but yeah, it's Groves, Port Arthur, Beaumont is different than Dallas, is different than Houston, is different than Austin and San Antonio, but it's still Texas overall.
Quick side story that I'm going to jump right back into the panelists and then us rocking this out. I got a job bartending at the Saddle Ranch on Sunset Boulevard in West Hollywood. And there was a riding bull in the bar. And the manager was like, "Oh, this is awesome."
Represent?
Yeah, they were like, "This is awesome. We got a guy from Texas here. You're going to show us how that's done." And I stood there for a moment and I said, "I have never seen one of those in my life." I moved to LA to see my first riding bull.
Wow.
There you have it. Anyway.
Yeah, but did you represent?
What's that, Brian?
Did you represent?
I did not represent.
Oh.
But the first person I served, and I had to check IDs
Yeah.
Because it was that kind of place, or is that kind of place, meaning a lot of young people go there. From Carrollton, Texas, outside of Dallas. I was like, oh, look at this. We're riding bull and somebody from Dallas. Awesome.
So you didn't go all Bud Davis, Urban Cowboy, and jump on there? And
did not. And then Matt Sorum came in the first night I worked, and I served him.
Hey, that's cool.
And yeah, he and I talked for like ever, and it was awesome. I thought,
Saddle Ranch Chop House?
Saddle Ranch Chop House.
I've been there, yeah.
Two, but this one, when I was on Sunset.
Yeah.
Okay, so enough of that, and then later we might actually get into another debate of whether or not it's stuffing or dressing, but we'll save that for.
How about whether it's Coke, soda, or pop? That's another one.
Damn it, Bill! You can't say that because that's going to open up a can of worms. We need to have a whole podcast.
It's actually Dr. Pepper if you're in Texas.
Good Lord, don't do that to me. All right, let's get into this. Joined first by BOF Roundtable dudes and co-hosts and BOF veterans, and our podcast would be nothing without them. Justin Kowalski. How are you, buddy?
I'm doing quite well right now.
You like how
I'm actually freezing. I'm freezing here in California.
What part of California are you in for our listeners?
It'd be easier to say I am about 50 miles out from Los Angeles.
50 miles out from LA.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Sorry. It's called, people will call it the Southern Inland Empire or, that's how it's usually recognized. But yeah, it's easier to say I'm about 40 to 50 minutes outside of Los Angeles.
Do you typically go through Pasadena coming into LA, or is that on the other side of town?
No, I can drive through Pasadena. It depends on how I want to get into Los Angeles. If I want to go, on the 60, that's the thing in California. You say the 60. I would do that all the way into Los Angeles. But yeah, sometimes you can bypass through Pasadena.
Cool.
Old Town Pasadena's a great place to hang out.
It is. I love it. Ryan Haas, what's up? Tim Drake.
Hello. I am doing good. I'm excited about this. I watched Attack of the Clones and Empire Strikes Back to back last night. It'll be fun to talk about later.
Oh, I can't wait to hear that dynamic. Okay. How's Chicago weather today, buddy?
It's cold. It's like in the 30s, and I think it's going to snow in a couple of days, so that's fun.
Wow. Cool. Hey, listen, I want to get with you. Did you see on our Twitter page yesterday, a guy was asking me about what Robin do I think is going to be in the DCEU?
Yeah.
My response, I said, I think Jason Todd is dead. I think that Dick Grayson is Nightwing, and I think we're probably going to see Tim Drake, and he'll be in his late teens.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought that was a good answer, and you said that I was slowly making you a Tim Drake fan, which made me happy.
Which is why I brought this up. I wanted to give you props, and we're going to talk later off mic about, I want to get your suggestion on some good reading because I'm starting to like Tim Drake. So
good reading is all of it. His entire run.
Yeah.
No, exactly right, and that's just it. It's overwhelming. Like, is there? And I've read quite a bit. I just want to see. Give me your. There's an easy path to the Tim Drake. So I will let you know what that is. Please do. Okay. All right. And then we have a returning guest, and he's become a really dear friend of mine, and he's been kind enough to jump on the Left Shoe Politics and be a panelist there. He's coming back on that show. You are coming back, Zachy. Is that correct?
I will be there.
Awesome. And then he's going to join us probably again, or he will be joining us again for BOF as we're doing our sort of end-of-year wrap-ups. But Zachy, if you don't know Zachy Son, he's a Huffington Post film critic and professor of communication and media studies. My pal, Zachy Hassan. Zachy, what's up?
Hey, morning.
Listen, I know we're going to plug stuff later, but let me just tell you, and I'm sorry if this is will cripple that you were going to post, plug this later. I'm stepping on it. But I was prepping dinner the other night, and I take longer to prep than I do to cook. Prepping is the time-consuming part for me. Making roux, dicing chives, dicing parsley, whatever, right? I'm very OCD about just the aesthetic of a meal. So typically I put on the news, CNN, whatever. There's a little thing that happened a few weeks ago, this big election, and I've just kind of been not wanting to listen to politics. But it's been great because I've been catching up on a lot of things, and I went back and watched all 7 Star Wars films. I went and watched 2 out of the 3 Nolan trilogy. I've watched BVS 3 times on HBO. We can talk about that some other time. But on this particular day, I listened to your 101 interview with Patrick Duffy. And, dude, it's phenomenal. It's
thank you so much.
Yeah, it was good. I listened to it. I was a huge Dallas fan when I was growing up and in college, so it was awesome.
How did it feel when it was said and done? You should be proud of that. I hope you are.
I was ecstatic just to be in the middle of it. I've been such a fan of his all my life, and he's so cool. I mean, it just felt like talking to a friend.
It's funny you say that. My favorite part is when you, towards the end, or maybe midway through, if memory serves me properly, but you refer to him once again as Mr. Duffy, and he was like, "Hey, Zachy, I think you've earned the right. Please call me Patrick." And you're like, "Okay, Patrick." And I was like, "Yes!" I wanted to high five you through the phone. So cool. That was a cool moment.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a huge Dallas fan, and so I've been going back and forth with his reps, over the past maybe 6-7 months, just trying to get something on the schedule. So we finally found a time to make it work, and he lives in Oregon, I think. And, he's just on the phone, and we're just chatting. Again, that's the kind of the purpose of the Nostalgia Theater podcast is exactly this, is to just talk to the people who were involved in the stuff that I love, and, just really unpack at length and at leisure, and hopefully we get something really interesting coming out of that.
And you did. Where's the easiest place where people can find it?
Just go to iTunes, search Nostalgia Theater podcast.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Good deal. Okay. Well, welcome back, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thrilled to have you here, man. Okay.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Last but not least, for our first time, we're having a friend of mine that I have known for, I think, going on 20 years. Mr. Brian Chatlin and I met. Brian, what year was that? 1999? 2000? When did you move from Alaska to Dallas?
I'm going to say it was probably 01 or 02 that I met you.
Yeah, I guess
it's been a minute, man.
It's been a minute. So it's been, we're talking 16 years, man. I think it's a long time. And our friendship has been interesting because we won't talk for a year, and then suddenly we're talking all the time. Brian is a filmographer, and he's a photographer. And oftentimes when I have big auditions that in this day and age you can put yourself on tape and just submit, it's pretty remarkable via email. Yeah. And you don't have to fly to LA or New York or drive to New Orleans from Dallas or all the crazy things that Brian and I have both done. But Brian typically always puts me on film, and it makes me look better than I am. Very talented guy, and you're going to do headshots for me in January.
Absolutely, right? I will. By the way, you're talking about Patrick Duffy. Got to work with a guy on a scene once, and he is just an absolute hoot, wonderful person. So,
what was the project?
Dallas, actually.
That's right. You did do Dallas.
Yep.
The new Dallas or the old Dallas?
The new Dallas. I'm not that old for the old Dallas.
Oh, gotcha. That's right. That was a good show.
My
parents loved that show.
Yeah, no, my mom used to watch it when I was a kid, but it was an absolute hoot. Here's this guy that's been around forever, and he was just a wonderful person to work with. So
one of the reasons I wanted Brian on, first, I think he has a great radio voice. I think everybody can agree with that. And he's very talented, and he's just the coolest guy in the world. But he's also he's a geek, and he's a really awesome geek. Like Brian, just a little bit about yourself, because you played Spider-Man.
Yes. Okay. So,
tell us about that real quick, please.
All right. So, 03, 04, I get a phone call one day, and the phone call is, hello, this is, I'm going to save the name, calling from the Marvel character appearance offices in New York City, working for Marvel Comics. We found your information online, and we'd like to know, dramatic pause, would you like to be Spider-Man?
Wow.
Now, guys, geeks, what is the answer to this question?
Right. It's pretty amazing.
Can I be Batman? Is the
Which, by the way, I got to meet the guy that does all the appearances as Batman and Green Lantern, and he's a hoot too. He was a lot of fun. But so they flew me up to New York for superhero training, so I got to meet the other guys that are playing Spider-Man around the country. And for about 10 years, I was their primary Spider-Man in this region of the country. So they'd fly me out to military bases, parades, do school appearances, doing school assemblies, talking to kids about bullying and child abuse as Spider-Man. You get 800 kids, a spandex suit, and a wireless microphone. Go.
And you would hang upside down. I mean, the pictures are amazing.
Every
really
chance
got
I get.
Yeah. That's so, and Brian, we share that with each other, because I was Superman.
Because you were Superman.
Show. Right. And so we talk, so it's like a bond that he and I have.
Yeah.
And hey, Ryan, on a quick side note too, I was actually cast as Batman. I get down to San Antonio, like, no, you're going to be Superman. This guy's Batman. I was devastated. But anyway, back to Brian. You weren't just Spider-Man. Now, what's your deal with Iron Man? Was that just...
So because I was their core guy in this area, I was Iron Man, Spider-Man, Captain America, Thor, and Wolverine, and occasionally the Thing.
Goodness.
Your Wolverine stills are off the charts. Brian's in very good shape. He doesn't have kids, and he's not married, so he can actually work out every day. And he's got a still with him as Wolverine. It's very much the Hugh Jackman-esque looking, and he's shirtless, and he has the claws and the burns, and I mean you look amazing in it, dude. It's a really cool shot. So too bad there's not like audio. We'll have to figure out. We'll tweet that. Here's Brian as Wolverine. Hey. Okay, so here we are. So listen, December 16th was around the corner, and Lucasfilm is releasing Rogue One, a Star Wars story, which I think is I just think it's a cool title. This is the first sort of offshoot, not sort of, it is the first offshoot film, meaning this is a standalone. It's not part of a trilogy. And them calling it a Star Wars story, that really resonates with me. So what I thought is, hey, why don't we tell our Star Wars stories? And what made us fall in love with Star Wars in the first place? And there's no rules here, gentlemen. It could be a film, it could be a book, a comic book, it doesn't matter. So I thought we'd just kind of come back around full circle and start with Justin. So Justin, what made you fall in love with Star Wars, man? What was that moment?
Wow. The first movie that I saw in theaters, first Star Wars movie, was actually Return of the Jedi. I remember seeing it. I don't remember all the details. I was like I was almost 5. I was like,
and real quick, I don't mean to interrupt, but just for purposes of this, because I think it's important on a timeline, how old are you?
I am currently, Stardate, sorry. Oh, I threw a Star Trek reference. I am currently 38 years old.
Okay, so you're 38. Okay, perfect.
38.
So go ahead.
Yeah, so I saw Return of the Jedi. I was probably about 4. I think I was almost 5, because I remember when I turned 5, I got like Ewok Village and all that stuff, those toys and stuff. So that movie was so fun to me. I loved every aspect of that movie, and as a kid, that's all you got. So I mean, you like something, and you got a bunch of Star Wars toys, and I'm getting a whole bunch of I never got an actual Luke Skywalker. I remember the only Luke Skywalker figure I had was the Hoth version.
Oh yeah, cool.
That was the only Luke Skywalker I had, and I remember a kid down the street going, "That's not Luke Skywalker," and I was like, "Well, my mom said it was Luke Skywalker, whatever." But yeah, Return of the Jedi kind of turned me into a Star Wars fan, and then after that, I remember my uncle would, he had he had Empire Strikes Back on beta, and so we'd watch that at my uncle's house, and but yeah, I mean, to keep it short, Return of the Jedi. You
said beta, and everybody under 25 went, what?
Wow. Ryan's like, what's beta? No, so
I know what that is.
Yeah, but I fell in love with that, and I loved the Ewoks so much that my mom made me an Ewok costume for Halloween when I entered into kindergarten, and she did an awesome job, like leather pouch, everything. I kind of looked like Low Gray, and I remember I wanted to be Low Gray because there was the little guy. He was like gray and dark gray striped. I don't know if anybody remembers. He was like the medicine man Ewok, and that's the one I wanted because I think I had a couple Ewok figures. And so she couldn't get that gray, fabric or whatever. So she's like, you can be your own Ewok. And so I was like, really? I think I even made a name up. I don't remember, but I just remember being disqualified from the kindergarten costume parade. I wasn't eligible to win. I got the march, and she said, she told me that, you can't have store-bought costumes to win. And I was like, my mom made this. And she's like, no, you mean your mom bought this? I was like, no. I was crying under my little Ewok mask. And I'll try to find like a picture and maybe send it in. It was awesome, and I ended up losing it when I was in high school somehow. But anywho, man, I was just so happy to be this Ewok, and it was amazing. Had pouch and everything, man.
So how do you feel about the Ewoks today? Like,
you know what, man? I freaking love
sorry, go ahead. How do you feel about Ewoks today?
I love Ewoks. If I could cuddle with an Ewok on the couch as I watch Star Wars movies, I would do so. I mean, I think it was the right blend of a kid, cute type of character, and at the same time, they were cool. They inhabited, Endor, and there's that one scene in Jedi where one of them dies, and every time this scene happens, dude, like a little tear starts to form in my eye, and because he dies, and he kind of cares for his little Ewok buddy. You know what scene I'm talking about?
No, I know exactly what you're talking about. It's actually, hey, listen, I will say this. I think it was necessary because when you have these little guys and they're like taking out stormtroopers by just throwing rocks at their head, like something kind of had to happen, right? Yeah. But that was originally intended to be the land of the Wookiees. If I think that's correct anyway. I hope that's not just a rumor. I think that's officially like accurate, right? So it's kind of interesting.
Yeah, I was gonna say I like Ewoks, and I can keep going on and on and on, but.
So Return of the Jedi. So you're watching, but you're watching Return of the Jedi for the first time, but you don't really have a frame of reference. So were you remember? Did you just feel lost, or were you just so wrapped up in the moment that you didn't care?
I just knew Star Wars is cool. I remember going into kindergarten the next year. I had Darth Vader shoes. I remember it was a sweet shoe box. I remember they were gray Darth Vader shoes, and I was super stoked. And I remember some kid was like, again, I was always just picked on like, Darth Vader, you should be Luke Skywalker. It was like, I don't care, dude. Darth Vader looks cool. I didn't have a frame of reference going into it. I just knew we're going to see Star Wars, and that's really like, okay, cool. I'm excited about this, because I think I had some toys before going into the movie, just because they had, there was toys from like probably the late 70s to early 80s, always in flux. So I had some toys going into it. So it was like, all right, cool. We're going to the movies. And then just fell in love with the whole, the speeder bikes. Oh man, everything was so rad about that. So,
and let me ask you this. Did the kids say we're going to go see Star Wars, or did they say we're going to see Return of the Jedi?
It was my parents. We went to the drive-in. So they're like, we're going to go see Star Wars. That's kind of, I remember we're going to go see Star Wars. All right, cool. Yeah,
because to me, when I was growing up with those films, the original trilogy, we called them by their actual, like A New Hope was just Star Wars, and then it was Empire Strikes Back, the Jedi. And I think once the prequels came out, that's when people started just referring to them all as Star Wars Episode 1 or whatever, right? Yeah. So that's why I asked. That's
my family. They weren't.
That might have been a geographical thing, like what do you call Coke kind of deal.
Yeah, my dad would have been, let's go, see Episode 6. No,
right.
So no, it was just Star Wars.
And by the way, Coke does mean any soda. Okay. Anyway, Ryan Haas, buddy, what made you fall in love with Star Wars, man? Do you remember?
Sorry, I was coughing. You might have to cut that out. So for me, age-wise, I just turned 29 in November, and which means I was not around for any of the original trilogy. The first time I ever remember experiencing or knowing what Star Wars was watching Muppet Babies.
Oh, wow.
And I'm not joking, because in Muppet Babies, they would always, they would open a door. I don't know if you guys really watched the show or whatever, but it was like my show as a kid. And when they were all the Muppet Babies, and when they would open doors or whatever, they would usually show footage from old movies or whatever, but a lot of times they would just show footage from Star Wars. and with, in space with the Millennium Falcon or X-Wings or something. And I always wondered, what is the deal with this? And I didn't understand what it was, but that was probably my first exposure to Star Wars. And then I didn't really see the films until much later. What I do remember is I remember The Phantom Menace coming out. So I'm a child of the 90s. I was born in 1987. And I remember being in 5th grade and parents taking their kids out of class to go see The Phantom Menace when it came out. And I was like, what is this? Why is this? People are taking my friends out of school to go see a movie. What is this? What's happening? And it totally felt like a huge deal at the time. And I wondered why. Eventually I did see it. I'm pretty sure that I saw the movie at, I think it was maybe Tinseltown in Bristol, Virginia, I think. And I really remember liking it at the time, but I'm pretty sure the first movie I really saw and paid attention to was The Phantom Menace. Even as a 5th grader, I didn't like Jar Jar, but we'll get into that later. And then from there, I saw the original trilogy. I think I'd always known that Darth Vader was Luke's father. Spoilers, but just because that's just something that's so ingrained in the pop culture, you just hear it. So I saw Phantom Menace first, and then I watched all 3 original films, and then I remember, I think I was in 8th grade
when you watched the original films before Attack of the Clones came out, right?
Yes, for sure. Because the difference between Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones, I believe, was I was in 5th grade when Phantom Menace came out, and I was in 8th grade when Attack of the Clones came out. And it was
1999 to 2002, right?
Yeah. So I was thinking about this. I'm like, I don't really think my Star Wars story is that interesting. But the more I think about it, when each of these prequels came out, there were fun events that happened around it. So I was in 8th grade when Attack of the Clones came out. Every year, our class would do a entire class, like extended trip, like a week-long field trip or something. And I believe they were going to like Charleston, South Carolina or something like that. And I chose not to go on that trip so I could stay and watch episode 2 when it came out.
Right.
So I like
priorities, man. Come on.
Yeah, I totally chose to do that. And then for Revenge of the Sith, I dressed up like, me and all my friends dressed up like Star Wars characters. I dressed up like Chewbacca because I could do the roar and all that stuff. And so I dressed up like Chewbacca, and we went to
whoa.
Yeah, we got to back that one up.
Yeah. Okay, well, I'm out. Well,
I'm out.
You got me on the spot. Let me see if I
got
can.
You on the spot. Can you do it? Nope.
Drum roll.
Okay. That's the closest I can.
Yeah. That's actually
very nice.
Pretty good, man. I can't even touch that.
Ooh, that was hard.
Okay, so anyway, so you dressed up as Chewbacca.
Voice is out.
Then you went and saw Sith.
No, I'm good. So yeah, we went to see Revenge of the Sith at midnight in Johnson City, Tennessee. I was Chewbacca. My future wife was Leia, and we all had Jedis and all kinds of stuff, and it was just hilarious, just going into the theater totally dressed up, because at the time we were definitely like, well, this is the end of an era. This is the last Star Wars we're going to get to go to in the theater forever, because they're not making any more after this. so we made it a point, and it was on a Thursday night. I was still in high school, and went to see a midnight movie on like a Thursday night, and went right to school the next day, and we were all completely super tired. But there were lightsaber fights in front of the theater screen before the movie started. I mean, it was a great experience.
So you were Chewbacca and your wife was Leia. So I've got a question.
Yeah.
Is there any reason that you guys didn't actually hug after you found out Han was dead? Anyway, just a Force Awakens joke that fell flat. So let's move on. So anyway, after the Revenge of the Sith,
we were upset about that.
Cut that joke out, Jett.
Yeah.
Oh no, I'm leaving that in there.
No, hey, listen, I think that was actually a pretty amazing joke. That's not my fault that you guys...
It was amazing, but now, yeah.
You're not up to speed with the...
It's a thinker, Rick.
We're still bitter that didn't happen.
It's a thinker.
So instead of laughing, we're just like grumpy.
Hey, Bill, just put in like a 1980s sitcom laugh track in there for me, would you?
Yeah, I'll do my best.
So
Cool,
yeah,
man.
so I was exposed to kind of the prequels as a kid, and kind of grew up with the prequels, which I think is kind of different than a lot of people.
Well, and I'm obviously you would be here because we're the BOF family, but I'm really glad that you're here for this specific episode. A lot of it has to do with your age, because there's going to be a lot of different perspectives. Bill, if he does decide to chime in, hi Bill. He is the oldest out of all of us, and then I'm the second. I'm in my 40s, and I think it's interesting to see. Like when I went to the Force Awakens midnight screening, there were a bunch of young kids. I say kids. I shouldn't say that. They were early 20s, late teens, maybe, probably early 20s. And it was interesting to me. They were all dressed up as prequel characters. And I looked at that and said, man, that's a generational thing. That's cool. And it was a really cool moment. But anyhow, so, Zachy, you and I have talked Star Wars, quite a bit.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to kind of get more into your head, in your head about how you fell in love with Star Wars and whatnot. So what was that moment in your life?
Well, I don't think there was any one moment where I fell in love with Star Wars. I think it's just Star Wars was a part of my life basically from the time I was in the cradle, because I was born in 79.
That's a good answer. I like that.
And well, yeah, and I had the benefit of an older brother who was 5 years older than me. So he was, the exact age to have consumed the movies as they were coming out. So from the time I was a kid, I was surrounded by the toys. I was just inundated with Star Wars, right? Because it was right, I was born shortly before Empire Strikes Back came out. And by the time I had awareness, Return of the Jedi stuff was everywhere, So for me, I think of the original trilogy not as something sequential, but as something nonlinear. It all existed at once for me, and it was brand new.
Right.
So, my memories are I had Return of the Jedi breakfast cereal bowl and placemats, and I had a belt buckle with the classic Return of the Jedi logo. And, that was my Star Wars experience. And so I feel like I got to have it both ways because I was born after the original film came out, but I came of age with the original trilogy before the prequels came out. So, I got both of those experiences kind of distinctly. And it's like I said, it's just always been there. And I love being able to experience it now through my kids and see how they, the stuff that they glom onto and how they sort of interface with it.
Sure. What was the first film you saw in the theater? Do you remember? Was it Jedi?
So the first time I saw Star Wars in the theater was Star Wars, the special edition in 1997.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I watched all of the special edition releases in the early part of 97.
You know what? I have a quick aside to that. I remember when I tried to be a Star Wars fan before that. They only had, I think in our town, they only had the extended editions out for like one week per edition or something.
Oh,
and
wow.
we were all set to go see, I believe it was Return of the Jedi that week, and I was so excited to see a Star Wars movie in the theater, and it was going to be my first Star Wars movie. It was Return of the Jedi, and we go to the theater, and then they had already taken it out and put in, I think it was Turbo, a Power Rangers movie instead.
Oh no! Oh, wow.
So my Star Wars fandom was slightly delayed.
That's hilarious.
That's 1997. Gosh, that seems like 1,000 years ago, and it feels like yesterday. Hey, Zach, you referenced something that I alluded to earlier, and so I just wanted to pick up on it, if you don't mind, because I think it's interesting. You talked about the classic Return of the Jedi logo, and I had said I brought it up earlier that growing up, those films existed by their name. It was The Empire Strikes Back.
It was Star Wars, The Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi.
Right. And even the logos, like if you
they
look
have distinct logos for each film, yeah.
Distinct logos, right. And Star Wars, like on the Empire Strikes Back logo, is small. Same with Return of the Jedi.
Yeah.
And there's something about that I find that interesting, that when the prequels came out, Lucas changed that, where it was Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, right? It just didn't have they weren't as pronounced with their, I guess now they're more or less like, what would you call that? I guess a subtitle, so to speak.
Yeah.
Yeah, and even with Force Awakens, it was the Force Awakens, those 3 words really don't have a definitive logo. They're just sort of regular font
they're just tacked onto the traditional Star Wars logo.
The traditional Star Wars logo.
Disney branding right there. They're like, bam, what makes money? Star Wars. What doesn't make money?
Yeah.
Yeah, I suppose, but Lucas did it first, really, because and it wasn't like he didn't think The Phantom Menace wasn't going to make money. And quite frankly, The Phantom Menace is my favorite title out of any Star Wars movie.
Well, plus, I mean, I'm sure they wanted to capitalize on the fact that this is Episode 1. We talked about Episode 4 for years. Now we're going back. I mean, that's
for sure.
Maybe not even so much capitalize, but clarify that this is before those other ones.
Absolutely.
That's perfectly stated, to clarify. Yeah. And by the way, does anybody agree with me too that Episode 1 still has the coolest poster with Anakin?
It's pretty good.
In the shadow as Vader. I think it's amazing.
Oh, the teaser poster, you mean?
The teaser poster, yeah.
The shadow when he's there on Tatooine with the Vader.
Yeah, you see Anakin walking. He's by himself. His head's down, but his shadow is Darth Vader.
Yeah, that's a gorgeous poster.
It's a gorgeous poster. It really is. So, Zachy, you have 3 young sons.
4.
And 4 years. So why do I always do that? I did that last time we talked. I said 3. Like, I guess, I don't know why.
4 boys and a little girl is on the way.
Oh, wow.
What?
Awesome.
Wait, time out.
Yeah.
You're having another kid and you're having a daughter?
We have a girl coming in March, yeah.
Whoa, that's huge news, man. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. Yeah, we've got the 4 turtles and now April O'Neil is coming.
That is so fantastic.
I'm glad you didn't say Venus de Milo. I'm glad you went.
I went with April, yeah.
I'm thrilled you're having a little girl. Nothing against boys. I'm just saying that you have 4 gorgeous boys and it's time for a little girl in your life. I have 2 daughters and I could have 10 kids and they could all be girls. At this point I wouldn't care. I don't want 10 kids. I'm done. We're done with 2. But I'm just saying that little girls make the world go round. But your 4 sons, so they're, how much are they into Star Wars? I know they're into comics, but Star Wars, what is their?
I mean, I think it's kind of the same thing. I mean, it's a part of their life experience. They don't know Star Wars not being around, and I love that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And part of it, obviously, they're my kids, so there is that extra level of sort of geeky exposure. But one thing I always like, for them, it's all one big story. And I've had this conversation with some people who are like, oh, are you going to not show them the prequels and all this? And I say, well, no, I mean, why would I not they like Star Wars. They like all of it.
What if I know you have 4 different kids with 4 different personalities, but just at random, if they're going for one of the movies, do they all gravitate towards like a favorite? Is there anything specific?
Yeah, Return of the Jedi. They like Return of the Jedi.
Return of the Jedi.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's their favorite.
Man. I love Return of the Jedi. It's fantastic. Very nice. Okay, Mr. Brian Chapman, what's up, buddy? How when did you fall in love with Star Wars, man? Now you were living in Alaska because how old are you? I know I'm 2 years older than you. Is that right?
Yeah, so I'm 38. I was born the year after the original Star Wars came out. Okay. So there's a piece when I was very, very, very young where I recall seeing some of the visuals of the original Star Wars and not knowing anything about. I mean, as a kid that age, you're not going to grasp the story, but you can grasp some of the pictures that you're seeing. And I remember it being just, what is this? This is cool. What is this? But my Star Wars story actually starts. First off, I had some friends that had the Snowspeeder toy. They had the Tauntaun toy, and I remember the Tauntaun toy had it was hard plastic, except for the belly. The belly was a layer of rubber with a slit down the middle. And I remember looking at the toy, going, "What is this?"
That's funny.
And you don't get that until you've seen the movie. But my mom, we had cable, but we didn't have any of the movie channels. And at one point in time, my mom recorded 2 movies for me on VHS. And the 2 movies that she recorded on VHS with commercials were Empire Strikes Back and Wrath of Khan.
Nice.
Oh wow!
If you're going to get started in sci-fi, those are probably the two top movies of the era.
It's like the sci-fi starter pack.
That's the sci-fi
starter pack. Yes.
So, and there's enough in both of the movies. There's enough of a vibe of a pre-existing story, a bigger story that's happening. There's enough of a vibe of chemistry. There's enough references to a much, much larger universe that as a kid I remember asking a lot of questions because it wasn't a self-contained story. I mean, it was a great story by itself, but there's hints of, the beginning of Empire. And Ben appears and says, go to Dagobah. And he says, Ben. And I remember asking as a kid, who is Ben? What is Ben?
If you watch the prequels, you won't know who Ben is, by the way. Anyway.
Right. Yeah. Ben isn't referenced at all until, number 4. But, right. So there were enough hints of a larger universe that it got me curious about the rest of it. And I remember when the, Return of the Jedi came out, I somewhere along the way got myself a ATST walker, with a little button on the back that moves the legs, and I had a exploding speeder bike. Again, a little button on the back that makes the whole thing fall apart. And those were some of my favorite toys when I was a kid. They were just incredible. But it wasn't until I was in high school and I was building a lot of models. I was an introvert. So I'd sit at home and I'd build models. And you build World War II planes or helicopters and everything else. And that's, you can find pictures of that anywhere. But I started building some Star Wars ships, and I wanted to get the paint job right for the Millennium Falcon. I wanted to get the laser scoring, the carbon scoring right. So I went and dug up a book that had close-up pictures of the actual models they used in the movie. And in the course of reading through this book, there's behind-the-scenes stories, because they've got a bunch of other interesting props in there, and they tell how they made them, where Episode 4, the escape pod, was 2 movie theater popcorn buckets glued end to end with a bunch of other stuff glued on it. And as a kid, I remember reading that and going, dude, really? That's, wow. So it was the behind the scenes stuff that really got me curious and really got me diving into the Star Wars universe. And that's actually where I became a true fan, is learning not just the story, but learning how the movie was made and what went behind it. And that's the part that really got my imagination going crazy.
Sure. Absolutely.
So it's anyways.
I'm still like behind the scenes making of films. I'm still a sucker for, man, I could almost watch that as opposed to the film itself.
Yeah.
I love it.
Well, and every time a making of featurette comes out, you got to sit down, you got to check it out because it's never what you think it's going to be. There's always something interesting going on. So the blockade runner, the rebel blockade runner, in the beginning of episode 4, the people that were doing the special effects department, the people actually made the model, stuck a miniaturized Playboy centerfold poster and a miniaturized Star Wars movie poster into the cockpit out of view of the camera.
Nice.
And it's goofy little inside jokes like that made me start really digging in. So the funny thing is Star Wars and the behind the scenes stuff is what got me into the film industry to begin with. So I have an entire career now based on, Star Wars.
Awesome. Yeah, man. God, that's a great story. For me, it's a lot of ways. It's like Zachy. I was born in 1975, a few years older than you were. 79, Zachy, right?
Yes, I am.
79. Okay, so I have a sister that's 5 years older than I am, and she is a pop culture like queen, and she still is to this day. If you go to her house, she has a room that's just like Marilyn Monroe, I Love Lucy, Van Halen. Late 70s, Billy Idol, Star Wars, just stuff. It's neat, and she's a really neat lady. And she was a cool, very cool older sister, still is. But because of her, everything that was going on in her world was mine. And so for Star Wars, she had all the posters of Han Solo, Leia, everything. And I remember she had a vinyl of the actual original score. And we would play that thing to death and just listen. I would listen to that whole Star Wars A New Hope, the soundtrack on vinyl. And I bet she actually still has that thing. It's probably worth some money. But it's just, that's one of my favorite memories is just listening to that record with my sister. We would sometimes we'd go in one of, I can't remember if it was my room or hers, anyway, neither here or there, but we'd hit the lights and we both had these disco balls on our ceiling that our parents put in because they were pretty cool. And then we would just play we would play the original soundtrack on record. And I would get lost in the music. Yeah. I really would. It's, I think that the Star Wars music is some of the most beautiful music ever composed, much less just in film. I love it. And John Williams is he's like a god, he just truly is. And so the music to me is truly what made me fall in love with Star Wars before the characters even did. It spoke to me.
It's its own character, really.
It's its own character, right. And when I saw I talked about this earlier, I saw Star Wars in the theater and its re-release, and my mom and my sister were like, okay, we have to get you caught up before we go see Empire, I think I even just did a little Texas twang there because that's how they talk. I said, I was just cool, right on. So we went to see it at this little cinema in Mesquite, Texas, and I don't think I blinked. I just stared. And there's the scene where Luke is on Tatooine and you're first introduced to him, and he's gazing and he's very introspective, and there's the two sons, and he just looks lost and not sure what he's going to do. And that, I'm 5, and I was Luke in that moment. It's still, if I had to boil down my favorite Star Wars moment out of all 7 films, and I love all 7 films, by the way, so there's a lot of moments for me, is that moment. That moment is, I can capture that moment and like put it in my front pocket and just carry it with me because it's amazing. So, and then through the years for me, it just stuck with me. Like Zachy said, it was just part of my world. It wasn't even on a conscious level or anything. And then once Jedi ran its course, I remember 1983 because my 2 favorite movies, and I saw them both in the theater like 1,000 times, was Return of the Jedi and Superman 3. And Zachy, like you, Superman 3, I hold special place in my heart, even though we both know it's empirically awful. Yep. It's still I still love it.
That's the first movie I ever saw in the theater, so you can't tell me it's terrible. I know it, but I still love it.
I couldn't agree more. And the moment, by the way, side note, when Clark kills the Henry Cavill Superman, I'm kidding, that was a low blow. When he kills, I love Henry Cavill Superman. That was funny. But he kills bad Superman, so to speak, and he stands up, and then that score kicks in, which is just as amazing, or almost just as amazing as Star Wars. And he opens up his shirt, and that bright red and blue is back, right?
Yeah.
People stood up and gave like a thunderous applause. I've never been in a theater where that happened again. And that moment was the coolest moment I've ever had in a movie, ever. It was awesome. God.
Okay, so I made it to the when they re-released the original trilogy, episode 4, when they started re-releasing those in the late 90s. I had heard all of the buzz of the lines out the door, around the corner, and down the street from the original, when Star Wars was originally in theaters. And there was this phenomenon that everybody was flocking to the theaters to go see it when Star Wars first came out in the 70s. So went to go see the re-release at the big theater in Anchorage, and it was exactly that. The line was out the door, around the corner, down the street, and I'm sitting there as a kid going, this is what I've heard of. This is the thing. Went in there, and it was one of these massive theaters. Everything is a stadium seating now. But this was one of the old theaters where you can tell there's a whole lot of people in there. And when the Death Star blows up, man, that still gives me goosebumps because everybody was on their feet just cheering. And that's when you realize how huge this whole thing was.
Sure.
So that was the time that I've seen people on their feet cheering in a theater, and that was
that's amazing.
Yeah.
I just those moments, I don't know, you can't recapture those moments in life, and they just
no.
In movies, like for guys like us and for people like my sister, these aren't just pastimes. This is a lifestyle.
This is part of who we are.
We love film on so many different levels, and it's important that people understand that, to kind of understand what makes us tick. When people say, "Hey, man, you're 41 years old now, you're going to grow up out of this stuff," I'm like, no, never, and I don't ever want to. And if I ever do, please just take me out back and put me out of my misery. Right? This means more to me now than it ever has. I'm actually really this next part is going to be an interesting deal. And let's see how fast we can go through it for time's sake. We're about an hour now. We don't want to push this too far, but
oh, wow.
This one can be a little rock and roll here. So let's the gloves are off because I know that I'm about to get really protective of the prequels. So Justin, Starting with you, buddy. Your favorite Star Wars movie, why? Your least favorite, why?
Okay, my favorite Star Wars movie is Return of the Jedi, just because it was the first one I saw, and it got me really excited as a kid, and that's what kind of brought me into Star Wars. Like I said, I loved all the I loved the Sarlacc pit. That type of stuff was fun. You'd like dig holes in your backyard trying to recreate that, with the toys and stuff. I remember trying to make like ropes to like kind of simulate Luke, even though I only had Hoth Luke. Still in my head, that's all that made sense. I had an Ewok village, so that, in my backyard, dug a hole and all that type of stuff. It was fun doing all that stuff. It was like it led into just hours and hours of like playtime, and so that's like my favorite Star Wars movie to keep it concise. My least favorite is The Phantom Menace because of expectation. I remember standing in line with my friend in like '99 waiting to watch this, and just super bummed after it was over. We were both like pumped going into watching this movie, and we walked out just kind of like, what the heck happened? And again, I think I'm not saying it's a terrible movie because it's still Star Wars. I still enjoy aspects of it. There's a lot of good stuff, but walking out, you kind of felt like, man, that wasn't the Star Wars we remembered. It felt like different. Someone else. It felt different. It felt like someone else was given the keys to something you loved and painted it like, whoa, I thought this was red. Why is it bright green with flames on the side now? Like, it just felt like this isn't what it used to be. And so in that aspect, I was disappointed. My heart was a little sad, but now that I've seen it in time, I can appreciate it for what it was. I understand that Lucas was trying to go for the kid, like, hey, this is for kids, and some of it though, just like, man, went right over. Even at that time, I was like 19. I was like bored out of my mind. Like, I was rewatching it the other day, and I said, the episode 1 crawl looks like a CNN like ticker. It was just boring as hell, man.
You text me that, and we were like, it is. It's like it's galactic C-SPAN.
I was just like, wait, what?
That's the whole movie, really.
Nothing fun,
right,
at all in that part. And
Justin, look, we banter about the prequels. I love the prequels, but Episode 1, and I'm going to kind of jump ahead here, so I apologize, but I think it's an appropriate thing. So we're in agreement on something. It's my least favorite. And I won't get into my favorite. I'll wait my turn on that. But it's my least favorite as well. And a lot of it had to do with expectations. And a lot of it is, it's just too cartoon kiddie. It's not, I'm just trying to reach kids. It's like you had somebody fart and Jar Jar say, ooh, stinky doo-doo or whatever. And I'm like, wow, that's completely left field. That was so incredibly unnecessary, and it took us out of the spirit of Star Wars. There's a lot of things about that film that irritate me. I don't think we ever needed to see Anakin at that age. I would prefer to have seen Hayden Christensen play that part and let him grow more into the role. It would have helped him, I think, as well as he's making his transitions. But the things that I do love about it, I love a lot, right? And it took me a few years because I walked out of the theater feeling the same way. I walked out going, what was that? Thankfully, there wasn't a Facebook back then because I would have been ranting like more than I've ever ranted in my life. I was furious. And then now you watch it and you kind of think, I see what Lucas is doing here. There's a lot going on that's just awesome. But you have to get past so much silliness to get to it. So therefore,
you have to get past Jake Lloyd. Oh man,
you have to get past Jake Lloyd. You have to get past the Jar Jar antics. And I don't hate Jar Jar like some people do, but he was way overused. And then when he was fumbling around and became like this, inadvertently became a war hero, that was just that it's insane. Yeah. To juxtapose that with the greatest Star Wars lightsaber battle to date really takes me out of that because. Let's face it, and for me, that Duel of Fates music playing, which is, I think, my favorite, second favorite John Williams Star Wars score, and then and Darth Maul with his and Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan, that to me is if you can ignore the stuff that's going on when they cut away to Jake Lloyd going, what do I do with this button? And then he blows up something. But if you could just watch the battle, man, it is. Yeah,
the moment when he lights up the second blade on the lightsaber is the moment that every geek in the the theater, their hands start shaking. There's like, it's about to get real.
How about when Qui-Gon drops, when there's that shield that's separating he and Darth Maul for a moment, and as opposed to looking at him intensely, he just drops to the ground and closes his eyes and meditates. Man,
and that to me is what made him a Jedi.
That is in my top 5 favorite Star Wars moments. That moment, right? Yeah. And so I that's why I still will enjoy watching The Phantom Menace. I like it a lot better now than I did in 1999. I'll tell you that. Is there anybody, just a side note, just maybe like a quick yes or no, was there anybody here that The Phantom Menace is not their least favorite movie?
Yes.
For me, yeah.
Okay, cool. Just curious. All right. Okay, cool. Justin, thanks, man. Ryan, what about you, buddy?
Well, earlier I alluded to me watching Attack of the Clones and Empire Strikes Back, and I was talking to Rick about this the other day, and one of the reasons why I wanted to do that is because Clones is my least favorite movie, and Empire is my favorite Star Wars film. Yeah, so I think I have the luxury of being able to see the prequels, as a kid, and not really having any preconceived notions about like, this movie has to be this or that. But as a whole, 2 trilogies, 6 films, I feel like Clones is the weakest because it failed the most in terms of trying to bring the story it should have told to life. I feel it was like a big missed opportunity. There's a lot of good things in it and a lot of good ideas, but they don't come together in a way that they could have and should have.
Is it primarily the stuff with Anakin and Padme that gets under your skin?
That stuff, and just trying to sell the downfall of the Republic too. I mean, just kind of just construction wise, it's just kind of very plotting. And what I did was I watched both films last night with the commentary on, and it was actually very fascinating to see and hear the filmmaker's approach to both films. And when you watch Empire, you hear a lot about like, this story is not complicated, and we had time just to focus on the characters, and this is a character piece, and this is a character beat, and we could do this thing and take our time. And in Clones, it was like, well, we filmed this movie, and we didn't have a scene that connected this scene, so way late in production, we had to film this scene to make it make sense. And this scene we had to film late too, and this scene, that scene, and this scene has to be here because it flows into the next scene. And I mean, just a lot of plotting story. We have to tell this part and that part, and it kind of gets too granular in what they wanted to tell, I think. But what really interested me is there are just tons of parallels between the two, which was actually very fascinating for me, and it did kind of improve.
Parallels between Attack of the Clones and Empire? Is that what you mean? Okay.
Yes, absolutely. So there's a lot of things that I kind of drew comparison to. They're obviously both the middle film in their respective trilogies. There is a kind of a love story at the heart of both. Yoda is a big character in both, and they both had to kind of achieve different technical, problems in those films. In Empire they had to, and I'm not exactly sure which had the greater, task to follow, because in Empire they had to create the guy and make him believable, but in Clones they not only had to make sell Yoda as a legit character, but they also had to make it work in CG, and they had to it was their opportunity in Clones, I think, to rectify what they had done with Jar Jar. No, we can do a CG character and it'll work. With the lightsaber fight and all that stuff, you have Jango
and
Fett.
Jar Jar was certainly shown his hat, so to speak, in that film.
Yes, yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
Right.
In Clones, you have Jango Fett, and Empire, you have Boba Fett. But one of the things that I just really love about Empire is how much it focuses on the characters. The structure is very untraditional. It spends, I was looking at the timestamp. I'm like, I can't believe the structure of this film. It spends 35 minutes on Hoth alone. I mean, that just doesn't happen in, modern films. They jump between scenes, jump between characters a lot. And Empire takes 35 whole minutes on one planet, one little story thread, and, which I really found fascinating. But I just, last night watching Empire, I just really ended up liking the the training scene. And I think it's a good comparison to episode 2, when we see Luke in the cave in Empire and he's internalizing these things that could push him towards the dark side. A lot of the same thing. I was really seeing it echo a lot of the same things that drove Anakin to the dark side that you see. You can draw a lot of parallels between Anakin's story and Luke's story and they're both episode 2 of their trilogies.
No,
sure. Yeah, and it's kind of fascinating because you know where Anakin went, and then if you don't know what happens, you could try to see, speculate that, maybe Luke is going to make the same mistakes that his father made. But then during that training scene, I was, Irvin Kershner, the director of Empire, was part of that commentary, and he had some really fascinating things to say during that training scene. He said part of the point is that Luke doesn't need guns and lightsabers, when he goes in that cave. He needs to trust himself. Anybody who needs a gun is weak. And I clapped at that moment because I was like, oh, that is just like Batman. And I'm like, oh, Luke Skywalker's like Batman. That's awesome. So, but overall, for sure, it's Clones is still my least favorite, and Empire's my favorite.
Hey, listen, I'll just say this, not to take up too much time on it, but the way I look at Clones, and I respect your opinion and everybody else on this panel. It's a fantastic conversation already, but I always feel like that one is the most underrated Star Wars film to date, and I still
agree with you.
Yeah, because people tend to like it's visceral. They hate it, and I'm like, really? Wow. To me, there's so much badassery in this film that I just can't hate it. The Padme Anakin stuff, man, I wish that Lucas would have let somebody come in and fix a lot of those scenes the way they were written.
Yeah.
And they needed a real director. There's no doubt. But I don't even think those scenes are as bad as people. I don't even dislike the sand comment. I just don't.
Well, I'll tell you.
Or it's irritating. I just kind of think it's.
Yeah, I don't know why everybody gets so angry about that one comment. There's
I think it's
a lot of other things.
Shit,
I just think it's delivery.
Sue me. I think it's a great line. I really do. I mean,
one thing I noticed watching it last night, it's not as bad as I remembered, and it's okay, but it absolutely could have used a little bit punching up, in terms of, getting them to that point. But just to kind of illustrate, I don't know how I noticed this, and I don't know how big of a thing it is in the Star Wars community or whatever, but just as a point to kind of show how boneheaded they were taking the direction of the relationship and not really plotting it out properly. There is the scene with the sand and the course and your hair and all that. Before Anakin puts his hand on Padme's back and before they kiss, there's the scene where he reaches and kind of, touches her hand a little bit. And that scene, if you really, really pay attention to it, look at his hand, because it was not there initially, and they put it in post. And what they did, yes. So what Hayden Christensen, his hand is on the railing. He puts his hand down off the railing, and they initially, in the initial cut, it goes straight from them standing there to him putting his hand on her back, and they were like, well, that's kind of a big leap. What if his hand, what if he touches her hand first before that? And they were able to do that because Hayden Christensen puts his hand down the railing. So if you look closely at his hand, what happens is it looks so terrible, the special effects. He puts his hand down, and then it kind of morphs into another hand that kind of creeps up and then reaches over and touches her hand. I am not joking.
I'm going to have to go back and rewatch this.
I don't want to watch it. I don't want to see
it. If you go back, I swear, if you go back and rewatch it,
I don't hear anything.
Look at how it morphs. His hand morphs into another hand, and that hand creepily comes up and boop, 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 creeps over to her hand.
All right.
It's awful. It's awful.
I get it. Look,
you'll never be able to see it the same again after that. I'm sorry. But.
That's awful. And it's the weakest part of the film is the things that were supposed to unfold with the two of them. It could have been much better. There are some moments that they have I think are great. I love when she tells him that she loves him, and then they kiss and then they roll off into certain death. There's the way that shot is filmed, the way it looks when they're riding off together, I think it's just classic to me.
Yeah,
it's very iconic. And I love all the Obi-Wan stuff, his detective work and figuring out the clone army. I love when I love his death sticks moment. You know, you gotta buy some death sticks. You can go home and rethink your life. Getting you and McGregor to have a moment to do that. It's fantastic. So there's something about it's kind of haunting to me. I really like a lot of Attack of the Clones. When I saw it in the theater, I remember going when it ended. I'm like, cool, Star Wars is back. Okay, they redeemed themselves. Sweet. Okay, I can be excited about Episode 3 now because Episode 1 was such a disappointment. So that was kind of where my dynamic was. Okay, so Zachy, what say you, sir?
So I mean, I'm going to echo Empire being my favorite and Attack of the Clones being my least favorite.
Yeah.
So Zachy, why? What? Let me ask you this, and I know I don't mean to interrupt you. I'm just kind of curious. What makes the Phantom Menace better than Attack of the Clones to you, sir?
I mean, admittedly, it's like a difference of degrees, right? I'm not crazy about either of them. I think for me, what I like about the Phantom Menace is, I think Liam Neeson just adds, he's fun to watch. I enjoy the moments of chemistry between him and Obi-Wan. Unfortunately, there's not enough of that because half the movie they are apart, which felt like a miscalculation to me. And then, the lightsaber fight at the end, I think is pretty fun. I think Jake Lloyd is not good in it, obviously. And I always say this, Jake Lloyd is the one person on Earth who can legitimately say George Lucas ruined his childhood.
Yeah.
No one else.
I hate that argument.
Back doing that movie if he could.
I mean, that poor guy, if you look at him now, you legitimately feel bad for him.
Yeah.
I think for me, Attack of the Clones, the reason I like it less is that I think it's not that it's too ambitious, because I think it's a good thing, but I think that it doesn't quite know how to meet those ambitions, and so it's very sort of schizophrenic. I agree with you that the Obi-Wan stuff is pretty good, and I think honestly that's less about what he's given to do than that Ewan McGregor is just such an abject professional.
No, for sure.
It's like
a lesser actor that would have not worked at all.
Exactly.
It's just like I was saying. It's so concerned with we have to tell this beat and that beat and this beat and that beat that it kind of loses itself and doesn't allow time for the characters to be characters.
Yeah, and I mean it's a shame because I wrote a chapter in a book that just came out earlier this year where I actually went and reviewed all of the prequels and I kind of said, well, people kind of crap all over them, but here's something that's good about them, and I think what I really do like is the political element that runs throughout them, which is Lucas's whole thing about how a republic becomes an empire, etc. And I think. And I mean, certainly, gosh, I mean, what we've seen happening over the past year echoes stuff that's in the prequels. They seem almost prescient now. But there's just too much. There's too much in them that doesn't work, and I think it goes to weakness in the script. I think that Natalie Portman and Hayden Christensen are done no favors. Both of them are good actors, and they've shown that in other films. But I mean, they're given terrible dialogue, and they fall in love because they have to fall in love.
Right.
And you never get that when you watch Han and Leia. You want them to end up together.
But it's the same base approach too, which is so fascinating. Yeah. It's just like, oh, they like each other, Well,
but when you think about,
you had a part of the problem with the prequels, and I still love them, but a big problem is that they needed more like non-Jedi people. Everybody talks like they're attorneys in those films, and there's not a Han Solo, right?
Yeah, there's no proper robes.
It's missing that, and that is
that voice of the audience kind of thing.
And look, let's face it,
that's
too.
what Jar Jar was, man. Come on.
You don't, but you don't have.
One thing. One thing that I say is that in order for the prequel films to be more effective, I recommend watching the Clone Wars series in between 2 and 3.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because that's like that gives us the heroic Anakin Skywalker, but we don't really see in the.
Rick hates the Clone Wars, don't you, Rick?
What? Say that again, Bill.
Rick, we talked about it yesterday. Rick
I've seen
Clone
probably
Wars.
10. I was thinking about it. I've probably seen 10 episodes of Clone Wars.
Oh man,
there's my
Yeah.
contribution.
No, I know. Listen, Zachy, I'm way behind on books. I'm way behind on animation right now. Big time.
I highly recommend it. I highly recommend checking it out.
No, I love, and listen, I've loved every one that I've seen, and I particularly got excited when it was Liam Neeson's voice doing the Ghost of Qui-Gon. I was like, wow, I didn't expect him to come back and do that. But I love everything that I've seen, and that's an interesting point. Where does, and just curious frame of reference here. So you letter grade your films.
Yes,
that is correct, right? Okay. Give me if you don't mind, give us your letter grade of The Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones.
Oh my gosh. So at the time Phantom Menace came out, I think I gave it like a really mixed to negative review, but I think I gave it like a B+ because I just couldn't bring myself to go lower. I think with the benefit of hindsight, I'd probably give it like a C. Probably give Attack of the Clones like a C-.
Yeah, see, to me, Phantom Menace is a C+, and Clones is a B-.
Okay.
We're not too terribly far off, right?
Yeah.
On that. And where does Revenge of the Sith fit into all that with you?
Revenge of the Sith, I mean, obviously it's the best of the prequels. I would probably give it like a B+.
B+? Cool.
Yeah.
And then Empire is your favorite, right?
I love Empire. There's so much about, what I love most about Empire, and this really crystallized for me when I watched the re-releases in 97, is it takes everything that the first film laid out for us, right? So there's no road it needs to pave, and it just enriches all of those relationships. The moment that just sells it for me is they're on Hoth and Luke is about to go off to, fight, and, he's saying goodbye to Han, and it's just this great moment where they're kind of looking at each other and neither one kind of knows what to say. And,
right.
But we know, and we feel because we've been there with them,
And you juxtapose that with towards the end of Star Wars, when Luke's about to go off, right? And they have that awkward moment. He's like, you just care about yourself, and walks off. You have to juxtapose that moment with the moment you're talking about, and that's the enrichment that you're referring to, and it's a perfect way to phrase that. Yeah, Empire. I'll just jump ahead again, and that way, when it comes to me, I'm already done. Empire is my favorite. It's flawless.
Yeah,
it's flawless. I even like, and this is kind of a conversation maybe for another day, another podcast, but as far as the special edition stuff, that's my favorite one that Lucas tweaked, because I actually have no problems with him putting in Emperor Palpatine as is.
Oh, yeah.
And that moment, it worked. Because, in the original release, that was like somebody's wife. That was like Steven Spielberg's wife, I think, or something. And they put like golf balls or eyeballs. I mean, I'm serious.
It's bizarre.
Yeah.
It's a bizarre thing that they did, and they just shoehorned it in. And so that worked.
Yeah. But there was one change that Lucas made, and then he undid it, which I'm glad that he did, which is when Luke falls off the gantry in Bespin, he screams "No" or something like that, and they took that out.
Yeah, take that out.
Yeah, they gave it to Vader.
Yeah,
I don't mind that scene in Sith. That's another one of those prequel hate moments. I'm like, it sounds like James Earl Jones Vader. I don't know. I just don't have a problem with it. I have a hard time defending it because I feel like I'm on
the part in Jedi where he starts screaming "No."
Yes, because
they added that in, didn't they?
Well, regardless, you don't see his lips move. It doesn't matter. Hey, Zachy, let me ask you this, and this is a way kind of wild question, but I'm going to throw it out there, and this is probably going to open up a can of worms that we can't afford for time's sake, but I don't care. I'm doing it anyway. How do you feel about Hayden Christensen's ghost being superimposed in Return of the Jedi?
So it's funny that's a change that I've defended, because I'm kind of like, given the films as they exist, putting Sebastian Shaw in there doesn't make any sense, because who is that?
I couldn't agree with you more.
I mean, you if you're playing the ball where it lays, then Hayden Christensen Force Ghost, that's the only way that particular sequence makes any sense.
Plus, who's to say that the Force Ghosts can't choose what they look like, at a different point in their life,
Well, Ryan, my whole thing on it was this, is that even from just a symbolic standpoint, or however you want to put it, that's how Anakin died.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
And so when you look at Sebastian Shaw standing there, Anakin never was 65-year-old chubby arm, chubby leg Anakin.
Exactly. Never.
That didn't exist. That garb didn't exist. That body never existed.
Yeah.
It's just a torso with the face. And so for him to come back as a ghost, he comes back as he was last really embodied. And I think it's, and maybe because I don't dislike Hayden Christensen in the part, especially Revenge of the Sith. I think he's great in Revenge of the Sith. Clones, we have some issues. We discussed that, but I don't have a problem with him in that role. But so maybe there's that, but I'm like, I can separate myself from that and say, no, I think that's just that was the right decision. And I think a lot of it, people that hate it they hate it because they hate the prequels. And they're like, I don't want to see that dude's face, especially in one of my favorite Star Wars movies. But like Zachy said, if you have to accept these as a totality. I mean, they're not, it's official canon. And they're using that ghost, they being Disney, as that's canon. If you look at any books that have come out that show that moment, it's always Hayden Christensen. And his ghost was actually supposed to originally be in episode 7 when they had Luke was written into it more. And it was this really cool hybrid ghost where he was like half Vader, half Anakin. It was going in
I think
and out
that's kind of fascinating, yeah.
And I hope they pick up on it. He was cut out because they made, Luke was actually literally written out of the film, as we all know. He's just at the very end of Force Awakens, which worked. I hate that we're never going to see Luke and Han together again, but it worked. And so I'm hoping that Hayden Christensen comes back as a Force ghost. I think he probably will. It makes sense. If he exists, it's almost weird if he doesn't, right? And it would be really fantastic if they could write a great scene and let Hayden Christensen sort of redeem himself a little bit and say, have a scene with he and Luke, or maybe he and Kylo. And I think it could really work. But anyway, that's just my thought. So Brian, what about you, man? Favorite and least favorite movie?
Oh man, I'm going to go controversial here for just a minute. Cause it's not an easy answer. So, the answer when the movies first come out is obviously the most recent movie that comes out, because when it's new, it's fresh, it's exciting. You've been waiting for it for a couple of years, and there's that whole buzz. The staying power is where things kind of fell apart for me. So yes, Empire will always be the number one. I watched it again with my girlfriend last night, which I had to choose, by the way, guys. If you have to choose what movie to start somebody onto the Star Wars saga, what movie do you start with?
I start with episode 4.
Yeah, I agree.
Would you?
Rogue
okay.
One. Yep.
Well, I figure if I'm going to get her to watch one.
Because if it's somebody that's never seen it and maybe they don't know, if they already know that Vader's Luke's father, if they just know that, and then you go to episode 1, why not? But I just feel like you gotta have that story told in that way.
Who said Rogue One? Because that's actually a really
that's what I said.
Yeah. What if no one has any idea in the first? They see the one before the one.
I think a lot of people's first Star Wars movie is going to be Rogue One, and of
course, every one that comes out, there's going to be millions that's their first, which is amazing.
Yeah, it's already my favorite prequel.
You suck. All right, so that's as contentious as we got, Justin. I really honestly thought we were going to kind of throw some punches, so I just had to say you suck just for good, for good and negative, whatever. So Brian, Empire, and then your least favorite, and I think I know what you're going to say, and I'm not going to be happy with it, but go ahead.
Bring it on, man. What do you think I'm going to say?
I think you're going to say Revenge of the Sith.
No, actually.
Oh. It was at one point in time, guys. I know that about Brian. So
it was. Well, so I got a better answer for you though, and this is where I'm going to get a little contentious here. Is again, watching the movies as they come out, I was early 20s, late teens when Phantom Menace came out, and went and saw that 10, 15 times in the theaters. Like, we had groups that would constantly get together. I had a buddy that collected all the Star Wars toys, knew all the names of everything. And he and I went and watch that movie a number of times, 10, 15 times in the theater. And it was absolutely incredible. Looking back on it years later, okay, there's some major problems with the movie. Same thing with Clones. Clones, I think of the original trilogy. I think that's the strongest one. I think there's a lot that happens there. There's a lot of bad things that happen in it too. But in terms of...
So Attack of the Clones is your favorite, because you said original trilogy. You mean that's your favorite prequel?
Of the prequel.
Okay.
Of the prequels, that's one of my favorites, is because there's so much that happens, the scale that happens in there. It explains the armies. It explains where everything really, really starts shifting. Yeah. So definitely love that. But again, staying power, looking at it years later, not so much. So here's where I'm going to get a little bit weird. My least favorite is Return of the Jedi.
No, I knew you were going to say that.
What? So this is this.
Hey, if you're a prequel hater, I bet Jedi is hard to watch because you watch Jedi, especially with the special stuff added.
Yeah,
it's like, okay, Phantom Menace is next.
Well, but let me explain why. Is I after I got into building the models and reading behind the scenes and really getting into the Star Wars universe, I started into the books and was 20 or 30 books in, and all of the different side stories that happened in the extended Star Wars universe, I was all over them. I mean, you continue the story on afterwards, the courtship of Princess Leia. Han and Leia get married. They have the twins. They have Anakin. And the Yuuzhan Vong come in and invade the galaxy. And there's this entire galaxy of stories that has been built up. And I knew it. And it was all approved. They were all sanctioned by LucasArts, which means Lucas put his stamp of approval on all of these stories. So when Episode 1 came out, he basically threw all of that extended universe out the window, and I started losing faith in him as a storyteller.
And none of those books that midi-chlorians referenced either.
Yeah, exactly. He started throwing some weird things in there and utterly threw that entire extended universe out the window. That's when I stopped reading the books. That's when I stopped chasing down all of the other extended stuff. Is because
again once Force Awakens came out too.
yeah, exactly. So that's when I started losing faith in him as a storyteller. There's a point you really want to believe that he's got this story deep in his soul that he wants to tell, and it's been coming out piecemeal, which is basically how he's presented it. Right. But then you start watching the movies and you start watching the sequence that's going on, and you start realizing he's really just kind of pulling it out of his ass as he goes along, which is what we all do. But I started losing faith in it. So here's the reason I say Jedi is my least favorite is Star Wars will be the first of its kind. The original Episode 4, A New Hope, is the first of its kind. It showed a universe the likes of which the world had never seen. It's absolutely fantastic. You get to Empire, and Empire is where the characters have been introduced and they can really start fleshing out the stories. And watching it again last night, Princess Leia
it's a classic Greek tragedy, Act 2.
It's an opera.
Yeah, totally.
So you get Princess Leia, who is issuing orders to a group of soldiers with an authority that says she's used to being obeyed. Now, you look at cinema at the time, and female roles simply were not that. So here is this actress who is playing a part and playing a character that I don't think had been seen in cinema yet. And so there's a lot of things about it that are absolutely fantastic. I'm watching it last night, 38 years old, watching this romance between these characters and buying every bit of it. And it is still real. The problem is, and the reason I say I don't like Return of the Jedi, is because in the first movie he made it for a generic / adult audience. The second movie was very deliberately made for an adult audience. But somewhere in there he's discovered that his actual primary source of income is from selling toys. So by the time you got to Jedi, he stopped being a actor's director and started concentrating on how many toys can we sell, how many side products can we market off of this. And I think some of the worst performances that I've seen in the series are in Return of the Jedi. So he stopped paying attention to what his actors were doing and started paying more attention to how many kid stuff can we throw in. That's where the Ewoks first surfaced. That's where everything started kind of turning a little bit more kid-like and a little bit more simplified.
It was the precursor to the Phantom Menace. I mean, it really was.
It was the precursor to the Phantom Menace. It was the precursor to Jar Jar. Yeah. So for me, that was Empire is his peak as a director, as a storyteller, and then Return of the Jedi is when he sold out.
And to be fair, just for clarification, and this is it's almost semantics, only because Lucas really probably was more director, but not by name. He didn't actually direct Empire or Jedi. Right. The only two that he didn't. Of course, he's on set every day and he's calling the shots. But just for clarification on that. But I see where you're going. And listen, I love Return of the Jedi, so I want to be careful here to make sure that that's clear. It's an A- on my grade. Okay, A-.
Right.
It ties with The Force Awakens as my fourth favorite Star Wars movie. It's it's Empire, Star Wars, Sith. Yes, a prequel is my third favorite, and fourth is a tie with Force Awakens and Jedi. I love it. However, to your point, there's a lot of what you said is true. If you watch the scene with Luke and Leia, and they're on the bridge, and he tells her that basically Vader's her dad and everything. There's better acting in the prequels than that. Yeah. It's terrible.
Well, and it's Han and Lando, before Lando takes the Millennium Falcon out, going, "Hey, will you get going, you pirate? I got your promise, not a scratch, right?" Ha 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 ha. It was horrible.
Oh, I'm going to actually reference that in something later. I disagree. I like that scene. But I will say this. Han Solo or Harrison Ford, I think, was bored. He was bored in that film. He was more alive and more Han Solo in Force Awakens than he was in Return of the Jedi.
Yeah. Well, he's kind of really wacky Uncle Han in Return of the Jedi. That's what I call him.
Yeah. No,
he's kind of mugging and making these bad jokes.
Yeah. Well, that was the one they had to like twist his arm to be a part of, But
that's kind of obvious. Like, would you just please let me be killed? I think his two best performances of Han are Empire and Force Awakens. I really do.
Yeah, I agree.
One of my favorite moments, we talk about Star Wars favorite moments, almost tie with the Luke on Tatooine moment is when Han enters the Millennium Falcon in Force Awakens. It is
we're home.
Perfect. Yeah. I mean, it's just it brings like I want to hug J.J. Abrams every time I see that moment, and Harrison Ford for that matter. No, but there's a lot of what you're saying, Brian, that I understand. Return of the Jedi is it's an interesting film, and really, Return of the Jedi and the Phantom Menace to me are first cousins. Right. They are they are almost more alike than almost any other pair of films in a lot of ways. But I still love them both. I do, but it's just it's interesting.
Yep. I want to temper my judgment by saying I have watched and will continue to watch these movies repeatedly and constantly. So me bagging on it as the downfall, I still actually love the visuals. I love the moment where the Death Star blows up again. I love the celebrations. I don't know about so much the Ewok party, but it is a fitting end to a series, and it was beautiful.
It's beautiful, and I love
it was suitably majestic.
When they're burning Vader's body, and then you look at Qui-Gon's body being a Jedi. Phantom Menace. Those are two moments that really resonate with me as well. Cool, man. Okay, so listen. So let's kind of rapid fire this next one here, and all I wanted to get at everybody is kind of a gut reaction anyway, right? So Lucasfilm has the Han Solo spinoff movie that's in pre-production now. I think they start filming in January. Obviously, episodes 8 and 9 are coming. And what else is confirmed? I guess that's it for now. Rogue One is coming out. So the next slate of films will be released, or we'll know what they have up their sleeve by probably the first quarter of next year. Star Wars Celebration, I believe, is what, in March or April? What month is that? Anyway, regardless, that's about where we're going to hear. So let's just kind of go around and tell me, Justin, what are you hoping for? Is there just one thing you hope that they say this is coming, and what is it?
Oh man, there was an article last week about this already, but I would really like to see an Obi-Wan film, but they say that that's not happening because there might be some Obi-Wan stuff in episodes 8 and 9 or something. So that's something that. And I don't know where I read that. Like, I
think I sent it to you actually.
Maybe. Maybe it was from Rick.
It's a rumor basically saying, hey, they're going to do this. They're just probably going to wait till after 10 because Obi-Wan, he has a significant part. And Ewan McGregor did do a voiceover in Force Awakens. They don't just bring Ewan McGregor in for a voiceover. There's more to that. And he's played really coy when he gets asked about it. He and Miss Kennedy have had lunch and talked about it, no doubt. So Obi-Wan.
Yeah, that would be cool. Just good Star Wars movies, I'm excited for Rogue One, or as you've been writing, Rouge One. I'm really excited for Rouge One.
Hold on a minute.
I was like, hey,
that freaking thing I keep doing it when I'm tweeting Facebook, and it's driving me crazy.
I keep correcting you too.
God, and I keep correcting. I'm like, damn it! My fat fingers just type that. It's driving me nuts. Now it's like I'm self-conscious about it, and I can't stop. So you're looking forward to just anything good, but you would like to see, and you want McGregor.
Movie every year. What else could you want? No waiting 15 years or whatever between episodes. Like, just keep making good Star Wars movies, and I'll be happy. I'm actually excited about Star Wars Land at Disneyland. That's what I'm looking forward to.
There you go. Ryan, what are you looking forward to, buddy?
If I had any requests, it definitely would be a solo Obi-Wan movie, and my wife would also say the same thing. But just because we, out of all the people in the prequels, Ewan McGregor totally carried a lot of that stuff because he really made you believe that he was Obi-Wan, and he is Obi-Wan. So I'd love to see him come back as with his own solo film. But if we're getting more of him in the saga films first, that's fine. So I don't really have any other requests or things I hope to see. I just hope it's good, and I know we're going to get a Star Wars movie in December from now until the end of time. So I don't really know, and I kind of love how close to the chest they're keeping. We don't even know the title of episode 8 yet. We don't know what's coming out beyond this, the Han Solo movie. So I kind of wonder if they'll start getting. I just want less movies with Death Stars, I guess.
Thank you.
Yep. No Death Star, and don't call it Death Star Killer or whatever. It's still a freaking Death Star,
so
right?
Death Star Mark III.
Less movies with Death Star, just a little bit more creativity there. But that's really all. There you go.
No, I hear you. So, hey, Zachy, little side note plug here as well. Zachy actually interviewed Ewan McGregor recently, and
I did.
Wow. Zachy was kind enough to sneak me a little peek after the interview. That's what a real friend does, guys. I was like, can I share this? He's like, no, that's just for you. I was like, awesome.
Wow.
Love you, man.
I'm a little envious here.
Yeah, but he interviewed Ewan McGregor recently, and you asked him about Star Wars as well. And would you say he played coy with you, or do you think he was just being, you were sitting in front of him. You actually were in front of him, right?
I was, he was 1 foot away from me. Yeah.
Yeah, because I saw the picture, I guess.
Yeah. No, it's funny because, when I knew I was going to interview him, I was talking to him about his film American Pastoral that he directed, and I was like, I want to ask a Star Wars question. How do I ask it? How do I approach it? And it just so happened that I was reading a Star Wars storybook to my kids, and there's a picture of Ewan McGregor as Obi-Wan, and they said, oh, that's Obi-Wan. And then there was a picture of Alec Guinness as Obi-Wan, and they said, oh, that's old Obi-Wan. And so awesome. I thought that's so interesting, because we think of Ewan McGregor as young Obi-Wan.
Right.
And so that I framed it that way. I was like, this is how, for kids, you are what Alec Guinness was to you. And how does that, do you ever process that? And he really opened up, and the sense I got is this is not somebody who regrets his time doing those movies. He especially with the passage of time as an entire generation has come of age, embracing those films in a way that, maybe they weren't at the time. He really sees the value and importance that they have. So, he said he'd love to do it again. He's had no conversations, and, he's like, I'm not playing coy. There hasn't been any talk about it, but I'd love to do it.
I think
That's a great
I don't
question,
think I don't think he's being honest there, and he's not being honest because he can't. And I don't know that for sure. Obviously, I have a hunch because there was the first time I saw him being asked that on film. He's like, can I say this? Well, no, and he kind of stumbled with it. I just don't think that with the buzz about it, with his character being, he's speaking to Rey in Force Awakens.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's inevitable. I think it's a slam dunk. Everybody wants it, including the actor and the people making these. I think it's only a matter of time.
Is that your choice as well? Is that what you would like to see, or is there something else?
Well, I think that's sort of the popular choice. But the one thing I would say is that there's 30 years of story progression between the second and third trilogies that I would love to see get fleshed out, that I don't know that the saga movies will really spend a lot of time backfilling. That's something I'd really like to see.
There's so many different directions they can go in. That's then, by the way, that's mine. Just to throw that out there, I want a Ewan McGregor solo Obi-Wan. I don't want a Obi-Wan trilogy. There was some talk of that. I think that could be ill, but I do want a strong standalone film. Brian, what about you? Is there anything specific you're looking forward to?
Oh man, Obi-Wan definitely.
Or hope they announce, I should say. Sorry.
Right. Yeah, Obi-Wan definitely. I would love to know what he got himself up to, but yeah, I don't think we need a trilogy on that. I'd just love to see a really well done character piece.
Yeah, me too. Honestly, I don't know if we're going to have another trilogy after 9. We may not. They have kind of alluded to that, and that would be okay with me, because quite frankly, I can't handle the stress of waiting in between all these years to find out who the hell's going on. Who's dad. It is like, I remember as a kid, like the 80s sitcom cliffhangers at the end of seasons, and I would be stressed out all summer about it. I just don't have that. I don't need that anxiety in my life. All right, so we all pretty much agree for the most part that Ewan McGregor deserves a standalone film. We'd like to see that. So here's the last thing, and let's maybe try to do this in like 60 seconds, right? Let's go around the table and just real quick. Justin, if you were a Star Wars character, who would it be and why? Is there
Han Solo.
Han Solo. Why Han Solo?
Because everyone imagines that they're Han Solo because he's the coolest guy.
He's the coolest,
right?
Sure.
In actuality, I'm probably like Snice Noodles or something, but I want to be Han Solo.
I think you're one of the coolest, and I say cool like that. Cool. You're a cool dude.
Oh,
you dress cool. You have a cool style, personality. You're Han.
Okay. Hey.
You're Han. You have great taste in women. Your wife's beautiful. You're Han.
She's all, you nerve herder. Yeah,
man. You're a scruffy nerve herder. Ryan, who are you? Besides Rick.
I'm Mace Windu because if I could choose my own lightsaber, it would be purple.
I love it.
There you go.
And Zach,
and you're still a badass.
And I don't know why, but this question, I'm like, I couldn't wait to hear everybody's answer, but I really want to hear Zachy's. I don't know why, but because you know what it is, Zachy? I have no idea what you're going to say. I kind of knew that Justin was going to say Han Solo. I didn't know Ryan was going to say Mace Windu. I'm not implying that, but with you, it's who do you want to be, Zachy?
I would say Obi-Wan Kenobi. And I think
processorial Obi-Wan.
Well, yeah, I think out of all the characters in the films, I really enjoy his arc because we get to see him go from this kid who doesn't know much to, sacrificing his life for the greater good. And I mean, that's a life well lived,
That's a beautiful way to put it. Man, that just reminds me of, guys, remember in Three Amigos when they were all sitting around? It's like, when I get this money, I'm going to go and go to all these nice restaurants and eat all the crab and lobster I can. I'm going to go find the prettiest women. I'm going to fly them around the world. And he gets to Martin Short. He's like, I'm going to help starving children. And I'm paraphrasing here, but you guys remember that scene? That's what this just reminded me of. Like, it's all kind of down.
I can't believe you pulled a Three Amigos reference.
Should have gone last, dude. Brian, who do you want to be? I mean, you kind of already are Han Solo in real life, so who do you want to be?
Oh, you're so sweet.
Oh, there you go.
No, I honestly, who I would be and who I want to be are two different people. Who I want to be would be Kit Fisto. Kit Fisto, absolute badass Jedi Knight who's got a big old smile on his face because he's having fun.
Yeah.
The one who I actually probably would be be Nien Nunb, who is the co-pilot in Return of the Jedi.
Yeah.
Who's sitting there going,
black, right?
That would be me.
Yeah, he came back for Force Awakens.
Yeah, he's the guy sitting there laughing his ass off while the heroes are doing their work, just going, dude, this is cool.
I'm telling you, that's like the Mr. Miyagi of Star Wars.
Yeah, that would be me.
Kit Fisto, meanwhile, Jedi Knight / porn star. Kit Fisto.
There you go.
Star Wars porn.
It does have the head tentacles, so.
I would be Lando, and the reason I chose Lando is because I've had a lot of shady friends. Because I'm from Mesquite, Texas.
Makes sense.
And I've been a little reckless with some.
Justin, that's great.
What's that?
I said, and you love Colt 45.
And I love Colt 45 because Billy D.
But do you look good in a cape? That's the real
best person ever.
Oh yeah.
He was Superman, so yeah.
He's a cool dude. He likes to gamble. That's a vice I have. I go to Vegas, I'll go broke. I do. That's why my wife only lets me go there once every couple of years. And then, he cares about his friends. He cares about taking care of people. If you loan me anything, I will take care of it like it's my own, right? I've always been that guy. I can pat myself in the back and say that. So I think that, that moment that somebody mocked earlier, damn it. But when, he takes the keys to the Millennium Falcon and said, "Don't worry, buddy, not a scratch." Like that to me, and by the way, who did say that? Who was that?
That would be me.
Man, you know what? Brian, you took the moment I had that identified the most with, and you crushed it.
Yeah, I have got one job, man. I got one job.
One job. All right, hey, Bill Jett Ramey, you have said nothing. Are you here? Are you with us?
I'm here.
I've never you've never been so quiet. So what about you, man? Who would you be if you were a Star Wars character?
I'd be Batman.
Yeah.
Hey, my real answer was Sam Malone.
And I can pull that off because Batman was in the Lego movie, which also included Star Wars characters. So there is
yes.
Yes, so
it counts.
Yes,
that's the 6 degrees of bacon going for us right there.
Look at you cross-pollinating there. I love it. All right, guys, listen, this was an awesome discussion. It's time to wrap it up. And before we do, everybody go around and do me a favor. Plug something that you're up to. I'm not going to plug anything. Announcer Rachel can just take me out. But just go around and plug something you're up to, and then also what are your plans to see Rogue One? Justin, tell us about something cool about yourself, sir, which there's plenty. And then when are you going to see Rogue One?
What's cool about me? I love my kids and my family.
No, your Let's Go podcast is cool. I mean,
yeah, okay. Well, this is plugging. I have a show called
and your Star Wars Rogue One plans. Yeah,
there you go. I have a show called Let's Go Podcast, and I do that like maybe twice a month, and I do it with my best friend in the whole world, Kelly Cairns, and we have a good time talking about beer and pop culture things and just music. It's just like two guys hanging out, kind of like this, except sometimes we talk about Star Wars maybe like twice a year. And then, Rogue One, I'm going to go see it with Kelly and my family and his family, and we're going to watch it, I believe, the Saturday after it comes out. So,
Awesome.
Yeah, man, excited about that.
You know, I get to see it on Monday the 11th or the 12th, whatever that Monday is. Bill set me up with a press screening down in Houston, and I'm getting my butt down there. I'm going to go that Sunday night or that Sunday afternoon, and a friend of mine is going to go with me. We're going to drive. It's, it's a 4 or 5 hour drive depending on traffic. And we're going to hang out with Bill, watch Cowboys game that Sunday night. Bill, where are we going to do that? Just that same bar? Is that where we're going to go?
We'll figure it out.
Okay, we'll figure it out. And then I get to see it that next morning, and I guess I'll be under an embargo for a few days. But And then Brian, you and I got to see it at some point together. I mean, we're in the same town. We kind of have a little tradition. Yeah. We'll have to figure that out. Ryan, what about you, man? What do you want to plug, and when are you going to see Rogue One, sir?
I'm just going to plug my Twitter. Follow me on Twitter at SMB_Ryan. There's another podcast I am on a whole bunch that's Batman related. It's the Everyone Loves the Drake podcast. It's part of Bill's Batman on Film Batman Podcast Network, and you can find that show and this show and all the shows on BatmanPodcastNetwork.com. And my Rogue One plans, I'm going to go see it actually at the IMAX theater at the Indiana State Museum on the Saturday, December 17th. And they are showing it there. It's one of the few places in the country they are going to show it in 70 millimeter film. There's only like 10 theaters in the country doing it that way.
Yeah, there's one in Fort Worth that's doing it, but that theater is so outdated, and it's just not. It's. I don't know why they're doing it there. It's only I guess it has the capacity to do it, but it's not. It's not.
Yeah.
It's not a fun theater.
Yeah. So when I heard they announced that, I just looked at the list. I'm like, I wonder if there's anything close to me, and that one's it's a couple hours away, but I think it's going to be worth it to go down there and see that film in that format. So
yeah, awesome. Zachy, what about you, sir?
Well, in terms of plugs, I co-host the Movie Film Podcast, which comes out twice a month with my partner and best pal Brian Hall, who works on Bob's Burgers, and we have a special commentary track of The Empire Strikes Back, which will be coming in the either next week, this coming week, or the week after.
Oh wow!
And so keep an eye out for that. We did a commentary for Star Wars, the original Star Wars, last year. So our goal is to do commentaries tied in with every original movie as a new one comes out. So
awesome! I can't wait to hear that. And I want to go back and listen to this. Where do I find the Star Wars commentary?
If you do a search for Movie Film Podcast on iTunes, and look at episodes from last December of 15. Or excuse me, it was Thanksgiving, so like November of 15. Yeah.
Awesome.
And as far as when I'm seeing Rogue One, I'm planning to see a press screening earlier in the week, and then I have a tradition that the Saturday morning of release I go to the first show with my boys, and so we're going to be seeing that.
Cool, awesome. And obviously you'll have a review of that film as well on
Zachy's Corner. At ZachysCorner.com, ZAKI's Corner.
And maybe HuffPost will pick that one up. I hope they do.
Hey, Rick.
Yes.
Go ahead, Rick. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. Well,
I was just going to say, because you mentioned it, man, that Disney's being really anal about this film when it comes to the press screening. So it's been, I don't know if it's everywhere, but I know here it's like I had to get a security clearance just to get Rick in. So.
Well, I know for some of the press stuff they've done so far, they showed them 30 minutes or something of the movie, scenes beforehand.
Oh wow, interesting. Yeah, I don't even think I'm 100% confirmed yet, Bill. We think we're about
99%.
Yeah, it's looking good. So, Brian, what about you, man? Plug something, and then what's your Rogue One plans other than you and I catching it together at some point?
Yeah, well, I actually just finished my first podcast with Batman on Film. I really like everybody to check it out. If you guys get a chance, sit down and listen to it. It was a great conversation. Otherwise, I'm on Instagram at Chatlin Photo, And got a feature film coming up. It's a romantic comedy. Yay! About to start production on that.
Cool. Very nice, man. Hey, listen, if you're listening and you are in the Dallas-Fort Worth area or somewhere that you can get here, Brian he's a very, very strong photographer. If you're an actor or a model, what have you, and you need some headshots, whatever, I highly recommend Brian's work. He's great, and he's doing some for me in January. So just wanted to get that out there because it is factually accurate.
Hey, much appreciated.
Bill, anything you want to say? Anything you want to close out with here?
No.
No.
I'm
good.
No, I enjoyed.
Well said.
No, honestly, as I was a listener, really, and I thought it was a great podcast. So I think anybody that's listening that's a fan of Star Wars is really going to enjoy the podcast. And actually, I like to have everyone back on to do another one, especially after Rouge One comes out.
Rouge One. Yeah, when Moulin Rouge One comes out, we'll do we are going to do I'll plug this. We have a lot on the table for December for Batman on Film. We're going to do a series of end of the year podcasts, and everybody that's on this podcast right now is coming back to talk to us. Obviously, Justin and Ryan are a part of the show, but Brian has agreed to come back, and so has Zachy. Probably have those guys on separate shows. That way we can just sort of more focus on their thoughts on 2016, and it'd be a little bit more like guest-centric as opposed to this panel. But that remains to be seen. All I know is that we're doing it. It's going to be great. And then I've got some Left Shoe stuff that I'm going to really, in January, we're going to start doing a Left Shoe podcast once a week. And we actually had a meeting yesterday and decided that. So for whatever that's worth, just to throw that out there. That's really all I have. I appreciate you guys listening, and I hope all of our Batman on Film listeners embrace that we were just branching out and doing just something fun and different. And we will do one more Star Wars podcast after we all see Rogue One, and that'll be in a couple of weeks. Other than that, we'll just have announcer Rachel take us out.
Thanks for listening to the Batman on Film podcast, a proud member and sponsor of the Batman Podcast Network, batmanpodcastnetwork.com. You can listen to the podcast via iTunes, Google Play Music, Stitcher, Spreaker, and wherever good podcasts like this one can be found. Follow Jett on Twitter at Batman on Film and on the BOF Facebook fan page at facebook.com/jet.batmanonfilm. Email Jett via jet@batman-on-film.com. Follow Rick on Twitter at ShoeRick and on Facebook at facebook.com/BOFShoe. For Jett, Rick, the BOF Roundtablers, Justin, and Ryan, I'm announcer Rachel. Thank you and good night.